Michigan voters go to the polls this November, and CMU Public Broadcasting again brings you Meet the Candidates, the election year series that gives you the chance to meet those seeking state and national office.
Hello and welcome again to this edition of Meet the Candidates. I'm David Nicholas, and we welcome this time David Jaroch. He is the Democratic candidate for the 84th District seat in the Michigan House. This is an open seat due to term limits for this election of 2014. Mr. Jaroch, thanks very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, David. I appreciate you inviting us.
And in these first few moments, we like to get a chance to literally meet the candidates and give you a chance to offer up some background, your hometown experience that you bring to this campaign.
My name is David Jaroch. It's pronounced like arrow. I'm from Ubly, Michigan. My grandparents settled in Port Austin, and so the family's been in the Thumb area for their entire 4 generations. I was fortunate enough to have parents that felt college was very important. So after college, I was able to come back. I'm a teacher, and we're able to get employment in the Thumb and raise my family. Today, my wife and I are still in the Thumb, but our children have moved on to better things.
And the district, you say, in the Thumb area, District 84 itself, what counties, townships are we talking about that make up the framework or the map of the district?
Okay. We think of the Thumb as everything from Port Huron north, but my district is 84th. It's Huron County and Tuscola County, which gets us out to Quanticosi, down into Abila Township and Water Township.
And we mentioned that it is an open seat for this election, so both candidates getting out, knocking on doors, appearing at campaign events. From those times spent with voters and the approach that you brought in looking at this and choosing to be a candidate, what do you identify as the major issues of this campaign? Major
issues in Michigan and this campaign, especially in the Thumb, is the job positions. We have a whole group of people working for minimum wage, working 2 or 3 jobs trying to make a living. What we've done always real well in the Thumb is we've educated our kids and sent them away, and now we're finding that our schools are being attacked, so our educational systems are under attack. So to secure the adequate funding for education, to secure the job creation possibilities to keep our kids in the area are the utmost to me. Also, the water issue, being surrounded by 90 miles plus of shoreline.
We'll come back to the water then in just a moment to get a few more specifics there. When you refer to the funding for education and then job training programs, what specific ideas do you have that would be either continuation of the prior office holder or a different approach as we move forward from this 2014 election?
Creating jobs, government cannot create jobs that I've found, but government can create an attitude and an environment that jobs can thrive. Your small businesses are the ones that are going to create the new jobs. So if we can take and simplify their jobs, the regulations on them, make it profitable for them to be in our communities, they'll add the new jobs that we want. We had real good success in Ubly. We had a young couple start off with nothing, and now they're over 1,000 employees throughout their whole system. You may have heard of the Gemini Group.
Is there anything specifically in the level of regulation, the business tax structure, things of that nature that the small business owners and people in the area have been telling you that they feel would need to be changed, that would be then something you would want to start working on in Lansing?
The tax structure for the small businesses never changes. We have new industries come in, we give them tax abatements. But for the small guy on Main Street, his businesses, it's the clients are not there to support them. So what communities can do, they can offer them perhaps some kind of funding to improve their businesses, the looks of it. I know their Economic Development Corporation has some programs for them. And the local communities can maybe do a tax amnesty for people that are developing and starting out. So there are things that you can do locally. And I firmly believe that local control and local involvement will get us the new jobs. I don't picture anyone moving from California to start a big corporation in the Thumb area.
When it comes to then the education, training those potential future employees, and you said we educate them and we give them an excuse or we let them move away. What needs to be done on the front of education funding to more level the playing field for a smaller, more rural area like the 84th?
Well, the 84th is going to be losing population, as we know. So I just left the superintendent's meeting. We need to take the pressure off of schools to be able to do their jobs. Right now, we're changing the target every year. The testing is changing, the funding is changing. Our teachers are under attack daily, our superintendents are under attack, our schools are under attack. We need to alleviate that pressure somehow. And I guess I would love to see us set a budget for 5 years for our schools, set a testing mechanism and not change it, and let them do their jobs. Teachers are trained to do their jobs. They'll take care of the system. The administration will take care of the system. But you can't do that when the target is always changing.
Is any of that influenced by federal education policy? And I'm not necessarily pointing to policy right now, but just in general, the concept of we always hear that people wanted local control over things like the schools. Do teachers feel frustrated by too much mandated policy either from the state or federal level when it comes to them doing their job in the classroom? I
guess I'm thinking from my own experience, if you have a policy that's set and established for multiple years, the educational system will take care of it. But when you change, so will there always be new federal regulations? Absolutely. Will always be new state? Absolutely. But we don't have to change it every year. We don't have to make it a moving target because the teachers are educated. Our school systems, you have one right here, Central Michigan University, top teaching training institution. Those individuals graduating know what to do. Our administrators know what to do. But you can't do that well, right now we have some schools that are priority schools. They were just reward schools a few years ago. In education, you're always going to have ups and downs. You have to take and be able to balance those out. In small rural areas, we don't have the critical mass in education to balance that out. We're always going to have ebbs and flows. I think we should have 2 tests for schools. One year after high school, check to see what your kids are doing. If they're all working, all going to school, you're a success. Check them 5 years later. That's to me, some of my best success stories were not the best students, but they're working, they're paying their bills, they have families, they're contributing members of our society. That to me is success. I get real pleasure knocking on the door of a former student and seeing they're doing well.
As we look at fluctuating economies and some things that people always, sort of the model is peg it to the rate of inflation, you talk about setting up a 5-year budget and structure when it comes to the schools. Then how would that 5-year budget, once it's set in place, project out? A fixed amount of increase per year? What would be the framework of that plan?
The framework would be the fixed increase. And as long as you know what it's going to be, you can budget for it. We're always going to have the problem of declining enrollment. That always hits schools. But as long as you have a stable funding source, then the teachers will know what the funding is going to be, the school will know, the community will know. And then there's some other alternative steps I talked to the superintendents about that could be implemented to help increase every community wants to keep their school. And I believe, and I talked to the superintendents, they believe that our communities will keep their school if you take away some of the regulations, and I can elaborate later after the election on those.
You mentioned obviously also the proximity, the tie directly to the Great Lakes and the water resource into the thumb. If we're looking at tourism, if we're looking at shipping interests, recreation, all of these things that come into the ecosystem itself, what are people telling you? What do you identify as the key water challenges?
Well, the big lobbying group is the farmers. They need to have the use of the water and the drainage system to keep their fields dry. So we have to balance that with the recreational use. I used to catch pike in downtown Ubly when I was a kid. I don't remember seeing a pike there now in the last 30 years. So we do have the rivers. I think there's a vast resource there that we can be using. The beaches are underutilized. I was up in Port Austin. I was up in Caseville this week. It's empty. The agricultural industry is doing well. If we can get that tourist industry doing well also, and also to keep using our water for our manufacturing. We have some good manufacturing businesses. If we can keep them active and going and using the water safely, I firmly believe we could make the Thumb area a really viable addition to the state of Michigan.
What else would we need to do? A lot of people, both sides of the aisle and across the board, have praised the efforts of Pure Michigan and what it's done to enhance tourism across the state. When you talk about maybe the drop-off in some of that recreational use, has the Thumb been underrepresented or under-targeted, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, when it comes to trying to revitalize and grow that tourism industry?
I'm a firm believer. I've been there for 60 years, and somehow 75 separates the east and west, and we're on the east side. So we are starting to see some Pure Michigan logos in our area, but it hasn't been the major focus. And could it be? Absolutely. We do have some great fishing opportunities. We have some great harbors. We have some great towns. It can be all utilized.
Ecologically or environmental-wise, for the health of the water itself, are there concerns that you see or that voters, potential voters, have identified for you?
What I see is to keep the water clean, we do testing up at the beaches in Huron County, and the beaches are closed often. So we all know that there's a problem. To address that problem is going to take a collaborative effort of a diverse group to look at it. And is it going to be politically sensitive? Absolutely. But can it be done? Sure, with the right people involved.
If we were to take just our last half minute or so, and you had the chance, I suppose if I was a voter in the 84th District or identify that potential voter going to the polls, what's the message you would want to leave with him or her as they get set to vote in November?
Well, I can guarantee you as a candidate that I'll represent the county. My background is the county, my support network is the county, and my concerns are the county. So that's what I'll take to the voters.
Well, thank you very much for addressing the concerns of that district as a whole, especially some of those specifics for the big issues like jobs and education. And we wish you the best of luck with the rest of the campaign.
Thank you, David.
And thank you as well. And appreciate your time and attention as always here on Meet the Candidates. We've been talking with David Jaroch. He is the Democratic candidate for the 84th District seat in the Michigan House, an open seat this November election. That election is on Tuesday, November 4th. We encourage all of you to get out and exercise your right to vote.
Thank you for joining us for Meet the Candidates. CMU Public Broadcasting invited both major party candidates for this office to participate in this series. Remember to go to the polls on Election Day.
Hello and welcome again to this edition of Meet the Candidates. I'm David Nicholas, joined this time by Dr. Edward J. Ned Canfield. He is the Republican candidate for the 84th District seat in the Michigan House. This is an open seat for this November's election. Dr. Canfield, good to see you and welcome to our program.
Thank you for having me.
In our first few moments, we like to give all of our guests the chance to share some personal information, your hometown, your background, and the experience that you bring to the campaign.
All right. Well, I'm from Sebring, Michigan. My wife and I have had a family practice there for about 17 years. I did sell the practice about 5 years ago and left 2 years ago, and now I work in Carroll, Michigan, which is another small town in our district. I'm from Fowlerville, Michigan originally, which is a small town just outside of Lansing, and my family were farmers. Way back. I continue to farm. I raise grass-fed beef in my, I'm not a real farmer in the Huron and Tuscola County sense of being a farmer, but I'm a gentleman farmer, I guess one would say. But we raise grass-fed beef, we raise our own chickens, and so we have eggs. We've even got a couple of pigs this year. I am a Navy veteran. 5 years in the United States Navy as a hospital corpsman. I've run a small business in Sebring, our medical practice, along with some other businesses that we've had throughout the years. So I'm very familiar with running small businesses. I have 4 children, 3 of whom are in college right now. So my wife and I are very aware of college debt and college payments and that type of thing. As far as the practice of medicine, I've been a osteopathic family physician for the last 25 years. Both my wife and I are family physicians. And so that's who I am, basically.
The 84th District there in the Thumb, obviously with plenty of voters that you've been knocking on their doors, finding out what their views are in terms of the critical issues. Now, you did mention being aware on your own background, a small business and then cost of higher education, maybe some issues you've identified as a candidate for this race. What, combined with what the voters are telling you, do you then see as the primary issues and concerns for this campaign?
Well, I think that obviously there are the primary issues that we hear about all the time. People are concerned about roads. People are concerned about education and jobs. And I think the other thing that we should be very concerned about, from my perspective, is health care. That affects everyone in the state of Michigan, everyone in the United States. We have some real problems with all of these areas, particularly in the Thumb, where a lot of industry has left over the last 10 or 15 years. And we need to find ways to regrow our small towns again. And I think that that's a very important thing.
Do they tell you that it's a matter, at least to some degree, of the state of the roads and the infrastructure, that it's made it difficult in a transitioning economy to attract business in because of why are they elevating, other than we don't like the potholes and we know that the roads are not in good condition? What do people say in terms of that from an economic development or sustaining or growth sort of sense for the 84?
No, I'm not sure that our roads are as big of a problem as our infrastructure in regard to internet service and that type of thing. I'll give you an example. I'm in the healthcare industry in family medicine. We have areas in the Thumb of Michigan that do not even have reliable internet service at this point. We still get lots of dropped calls for cell phones, those kinds of things, which I realize happens in all areas, but we need to work on that type of thing to allow us to have those kind of supports. There are other things where we hear about electrical infrastructure, where we need to have the wiring capabilities to bring the type of electrical generation to our area. We have wind generation, that's one thing, but to have the electrical lines going to the small towns in our community that'll support a large industrial complex makes that a little bit difficult. So those are things that also, besides just roads and building bridges and fixing things like that, actually our counties are a little better, I think, than some, because we have road millages that have actually addressed some of the road issues. We have a lot of road work going on up in our district.
You also pointed to education. It is a more rural district. We've talked with several candidates with districts similar, at least in nature and the demographics and so forth. The question of per pupil funding, extensive transportation costs, given the widespread nature of just the outlines of some of these districts. What do the voters tell you are their concerns when it comes to education?
Well, education is always a big issue in our small communities. People love their schools. They're not interested in giving them up. There are problems with the economics of education in rural areas and the cost in which you've outlined. I was just in Vassar last night, and they're talking about having issues there in their community about the cost. The problem is in many of our communities over the last 15 years, the population has left. Young folks have left for economic reasons, and parents are deciding not to have 4 children, but to have 2 children. We have large school systems that were built for larger populations than we have now, but you still have to maintain them. So the expense is still there. Maybe the per pupil numbers, they're not there anymore, and they're declining. We need to find ways to stabilize that, to attract other people to come into our communities. I think the other big thing is people don't feel like they have any choice anymore. Education is being dished to us from the top down, and we are having issues with students being required to take classes that may not apply to their life after school, after high school anyway. And I think that we need to give back some of that control to the local units, and maybe give back some of the money to the local units and have less of a administration at the top, either in Lansing or in Washington. Bring those dollars back to the communities, allow them to make decisions that will help kids be better trained at the time of leaving high school to enter the job market, so they can pay for their secondary education or their college education, as well as make a living if that's what they choose to do.
All of these have kind of centered around jobs in the economy, whether we're talking about the infrastructure, the state of the schools, the funding for the schools, and how that can translate to the workforce and the like. But you also mentioned the issue of healthcare, a question of access, a question of the debate over the national healthcare policies. What are people telling you are their concerns when it comes to that broad area of healthcare?
All of the above. The cost of healthcare is extraordinary. Buying health insurance is becoming a very difficult process. We have people who are healthy that are being required to buy health insurance that they're not going to use. A portion of them will use it, but the vast majority of young people will not use that health insurance. They're still required to buy it. And they're also required to pay back maybe if they've had college debt, $30,000, $40,000 in college debt, health insurance, trying to buy a house, trying to manage a family. It becomes very cumbersome for these people, for these young people. And then to live in a community where they can maybe make a little less but have a better lifestyle, it makes it difficult. They have to move someplace where they can make good money, or the best that they can make. Other things in healthcare is, as a physician, I tell people 25 years ago when I started practicing medicine, no one told me what to do. They came to me because they felt I knew something that could help them. Now it seems in healthcare, everyone's telling the physicians how to do their job, but nobody does our job. And the issue with it is with electronic medical records, mandates that we document aspects of healthcare. All of these things make it even more cumbersome, more difficult for us to do our jobs, and we have less time and less exposure to our patients in that sense. I don't know how many of my colleagues and my patients have told me that they're tired of looking at the backs of their doctors who are typing into a machine, and they would like their doctor just to look at them and talk about their healthcare issues. So we have some issues that we're dealing with that as well. But healthcare is very expensive. There are lots of mandates in the Affordable Care Act. There are lots of taxes in the Affordable Care Act. All of those things are going to take their toll on people's healthcare. People are concerned about large co-pays and large deductibles, which are the costs not paid by the insurance. And many of those are being asked to be borne by their primary care practitioner and the specialists that they would tend to see. And, you know, if they can't pay them or choose not to pay them, then that's a difficulty between the patient and the physician, or physician as well.
In the last minute that we have, for all the voters you've had a chance to talk to, if you've got that moment now to leave that single message with him or her as they get set to go to the polls on November 4th, what would be that last message you want to leave with a voter?
Well, I think the thing that folks focus on with me is I am a physician, so they think healthcare is the only thing I'm interested in. And I tell people that as a physician and a husband and a father of 4, a veteran of the U.S. Navy, I have a lot of experiences that make me a valid candidate. I don't need to do this job. I want to do this job. And I think that I can make a difference, and I want to make a difference. So I've asked people for their vote on November 4th.
Well, we appreciate the time and attention you've given to the issues and a chance to talk with the voters, the prospective voters in the district for that office that you seek. Wish you the best of luck with the rest of the campaign. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And thank you for your time and attention as well. This has been Meet the Candidates. We have been joined by Dr. Edward Canfield, the Republican candidate for the 84th District seat in the Michigan House, an open seat for this November's election. We encourage all of you to get out and exercise your right to vote on Tuesday, November 4th.
This has been Meet the Candidates, a production of CMU Public Broadcasting. Both major party candidates were invited to participate in this series. For a complete listing of the air dates and times for this series, go to our website, wcmu.org.